It's the Eagle Community Television Forum with your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Forum here on Eagle Community Television. I'm Gary Shorman. The Forum is brought to you by Hays Med. Our guest today is the Assistant City Manager of Hays, Paul Briseno. And Paul, it's good to have you here because we're going to talk about something that is really important to our community, and it's going forward. There's a lot of discussion about it, but I'm personally excited because you are heading up really the group that's working on the bike path and the development of bike paths in the city of Hays.
That's correct. I've been given the task, or I guess the opportunity, to bring forward the first ever bike plan to the community of Hays, which I'm very excited about. This has been a process that's been long in the making. We actually brought this forward through the comprehensive plan that was done in 2012. But what we learned in the process in 2012, listening to the stakeholder groups, many thousands of people who participated, is that our community truly desired some type of bike system. And in researching the history of this process, we realized in 1995, going back as far as 20 years, it's been long desired some type of bike system within our community. So it's very exciting seeing this come to fruition in the next year.
Well, you and I have both traveled to other communities, been a part of other communities where bike trails and paths are just kind of part of the development of the city. And in some ways, we've really had nothing here. We've had some wider streets and we've had sidewalks, but when you're out riding a bike, sometimes that's really difficult because of pedestrians and otherwise. But it's becoming more and more important as cities grow to find ways to allow people to ride their bikes in a safe manner.
That's correct, Gary. And Hays has long had a number of nature trails throughout the community. Right now we have Vineyard Park, we have the system over by the hospital, the system by the museum, and of course Frontier Park, which are all nature trails people absolutely love. Any time of the day you go out to these area parks, you'll find people traveling throughout those trails. But the city did lack a system to get from point A to point B, not only to those different trails, but also through the different commerce sections throughout our community. This is an opportunity to utilize our current infrastructure. A lot of times communities have a system of 10-foot wide paths, which is great to have, but sometimes they're underutilized because they're only used for walking or biking, and throughout the entire day they're not completely used. Here, this is an opportunity to mix both a trail system as well as an on-street system, so therefore we can utilize our current infrastructure for two purposes, getting the most bang out of our buck. So this is a very exciting process that we're moving forward with. In 2007, the city of Hays actually looked at a concrete path system. And as part of that investigation, there was comprised a system of roughly 13 miles of concrete paths throughout the community. Of course, this all stemming from the 1995 study. And what we found out is for 13 miles of concrete paths, it was going to cost approximately $11 million. And that was just something that we couldn't afford at that time and still can't afford today. But through the comprehensive plan system, our consultant wrote every street within our community to understand the nuances of the Hays community, understanding the street widths, how neighborhoods work together, how commercial districts work with neighborhoods. And what he told us after hearing all these stakeholder groups is that there is an opportunity here. Hays is relatively flat, and he understood and saw a system that can connect just about every park, every school, every commercial district, and many key points within our community together for a relatively inexpensive price when compared to that $11 million.
Well, one of the things I know, there's really two sides of this. One, there's a safety issue, and then there's the other side. It's healthy to be able to get on your bike and travel somewhere versus getting in a car every time and going.
That's correct, Gary. When we first initially investigated this, I did some study on the obesity here in Kansas. And what I found out is across the nation, there's an effort to bring obesity down to roughly 29%. In Ellis County, just a few years ago, the obesity rate was in the low 30s. So we're relatively high, especially for a rural area. So there's an opportunity to create a system that could help our citizens become more healthier. The other point that I would make, looking back at the entire system, and I apologize, I forgot what the second part of the question was.
Well, the second part of being able to take and having just the ability to go somewhere, one, safe is being part of being safe so you don't get run over. Before we talked about, a couple of our roads are pretty narrow, so being safe in that part of it is a big part of what we're doing.
You're exactly right, and the key component of this is the safety aspect. Initially when we started investigating this, my thought was, why do we need bike lanes? Why do we need sharrows? You know, I grew up in a small community, rode my bike throughout the entire community, and it's perfectly legal to ride a bike on the street. Of course, we prefer people to wear helmets and to ride appropriately. That's, of course, is with traffic. But what I found out and understood is that when there's a system in place, when everyone truly knows that bicyclists predominantly will be on this system, then motorists become more aware. It's much similar to when you approach a school area. You see yellow signs, you see crossing guards, you see painted paths on the street noting where kids are going to cross. Well, it's much like the bike system in that we're going to put stencils on the concrete, on the cement, on the streets throughout the community, and bicyclists will know that they could utilize that system, and motorists will know that predominantly they're going to be bicycles on that system. Now, the system was designed with a couple components in mind. First of all, we wanted a system that you can get from north to south, east to west fairly easily. Limited number of stop signs, so a person can get from the north side of Hays clear down to the aquatic park within a matter of minutes. Once again, Hays is fairly flat and it's easy to get through. Now, the system, you'll see a series of bike lanes, sharrows, and a mixture of both.
Well, let's talk about that, because Brandon, I'm going to have you pull up the picture of the bike path around town, because you'll see there's kind of a group of different areas, and you have them marked out in different colors, telling about those different colors. You mentioned some things on the asphalt. There's some red sections on the map. Tell us about the different sections, the red, the purple, the yellow, and then there's the black.
Sure, the red sections of the community, first of all, the entire on-street system is going to be comprised of roughly 18 miles of on-street system. The entire system, if you include the concrete paths, is going to be roughly 20.5 miles. We're getting all this for roughly $400,000 of the local match. So 20.5 miles when compared to the 2007 study, 11 miles or 13 miles for 11 million. We're getting a pretty good deal for our dollars here. But when we look at the on-street system, it's roughly 18 miles of stencils, of bike lanes, of sharrows. The red section of the map is comprised of sharrows, which means a motorist can expect to share the road with a bicyclist.
It's not a separate lane, it is just there would be markings showing that bikes will also be in that same road system as the car.
That's correct. Once again, to identify to the motorist as well as the bicyclist that you are sharing the road and be aware of your surroundings.
So if you have that and you're sharing the road with the bike, are cars and bikes equal in that environment? Or
that's correct.
Okay.
Cars and bikes are equal in that environment.
And then also you have some purple. That is where the road itself is divided off, correct?
That's correct. The purple section are bike lanes, so there's going to be a separate area just for bikes to ride throughout the system. Altogether, we have roughly 7 miles of bike lanes and right around 11 miles of bike sharrows and mixed with bike lanes as well. And it's all determined based on the street width, the speed of the streets, and really it's built for the safety of the rider as well as the motorist. Now, with this entire system, a lot of people have asked me about parking. You know, there's a lot of people concerned about parking in front of their house. The system was created in a manner to ensure that parking will always be available off-street as well.
Now, there are some black sections on the map. Those black sections are relatively new sections. Some of them went with a new project that's up on 41st Street, but then there's some other black sections. That's all brand new facility, correct?
That's correct. The black section north on 41st Street is part of a project that was awarded by KDOT. That's approximately 1.5 to 1.25 miles long of concrete path, which is 10 feet wide. The other section is along the levee, which is part of the levee cap. We did a study here 2 years ago and found out that the weakest part of the levee is actually on top because so many people utilize it, it wears down to almost dirt. If we were to have a massive rain event, the first thing that would wash out would be the cap, which would jeopardize the stability of the levee. Therefore, we kind of addressed it in two approaches. First of all, creating a cap to protect the levee, but also using it as a multi-purpose path. So there will be a 10-foot wide concrete path put on place there on the top, which will be about 1.25 miles long.
And you'll see that on the map, and a couple of those areas are really going to be nice to be able to allow what really is a walking trail on dirt right now to be able to walking trail on concrete. And where do you go from here? Will that then be expanded after you get through with this initial phase?
The intent as part of the stormwater study is to put a cap predominantly east of Main Street along the levee there. So that'll probably comprise about another mile's worth of concrete path. Now, as we move forward, this of course is going to be the initial year, as we move forward, as residents and citizens utilize the system either on-street, off-street, if they feel that they would like to see more and we can afford it, then we'll try to incorporate more lanes or more paths throughout the entire community when opportunities arise.
I know the university, you have a lot of students that are down on campus, down in that area, to connect with downtown, to connect with other parts of the community. My guess is you'll have that younger group be all over this with a chance to be out on their bikes.
You know, I actually did an inventory of how many bike racks were on the campus when I initially did the grant. And what I found out is there's roughly 66 bike racks. And anytime you go throughout the campus, you'll see those predominantly filled with bikes, which is great. In fact, I actually just saw a student, I assume it's a student, riding on 13th Street on my way over here to this interview.
Very good. Well, we're going to talk about, I know you've had some people that have been naysayers on this. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Our guest, Paul Briseno, who's the Assistant City Manager here in the city of Hays. We're talking about bike trails, bike paths, and some great future coming up for our community. Back with more after this.
Youthful body, tight tummy, smooth facial lines. Greystone Cosmetic and Reconstructive Surgery is here to help you achieve your goals and give yourself the new look you've always wanted. Greystone offers sophisticated surgical and non-surgical cosmetic procedures. With services now available locally, there's no need to wait any longer. Contact Greystone Cosmetic and Reconstructive Surgery at Hays Medical Center today or online at greystonecosmetic.haysmed.com.
It's a beautiful day in our super high-speed internet great customer service neighborhood. Like you, this is where we live. In fact, our company is employee-owned, so it's our goal to improve the quality of life for everyone in our community by delivering faster, more reliable internet, clearer, more feature-laden phone service, quality TV channels, all with the level of customer service you'd expect from people who are your neighbors. Eagle Communications. Our community connected.
Welcome back to the second half of our forum program here on Eagle Community Television. We broadcast and record this show every Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock at our great Dillon's location on Vine Street. Not only come by and see us and participate and watch the interview, but you can also buy some vegetables right behind us here while you're in the store. If you have any questions or comments, send me a note, send me a comment, gary.shorman@eaglecom.net. You can also find us online under the forum, under ECTV Forum on Facebook. Paul Briseno is our guest here today on the forum. Paul is the Assistant City Manager in the community of Hays. We were talking about bike trails, bike paths, and some of those things that are coming in the relatively near future to our community. And Paul, we went into the break talking about naysayers. And it seems like with any community, it happens this way. That, you know, an idea is out there, there's somebody says, hey, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And my guess is you may have heard some of that.
You hear that with just about anything we do, Gary. There's always an opportunity for someone to comment publicly throughout the public hearings. In fact, we had a number of public hearings throughout this entire process, from the comprehensive plan where thousands of people participated, through the actual submitting of the grant and accepting of the bids as well. I couldn't tell you how many public hearings that we had, but there's opportunities for people to have input in the process. Also, I know a number of citizens contacted city commissioners as well. But overall, the public sentiment was positive for this project. Of course, it was something that was highly desired for many, many years. And of course, at the end of the day, it's going to add another quality of life amenity to the Hays community.
Well, what are the common misunderstandings about this?
Sure. The first thing that I often hear is, of course, it's paid with property taxes, paid with sales tax. And the reality is that it's not. The majority of the bike plan project is paid with special alcohol tax. So anytime an alcohol beverage is sold here within the community of Hays, and this has been a tax that's been in place for many, many years, long before I ever got here, a portion of that tax is submitted back to the city of Hays. Now, we're supposed to use it according to state statute for a number of purposes. One, for alcoholic programs. A third of that is for alcoholic programs. A third of it is for park improvements. So we can't use it for any other purpose but for park improvements, knowing that this has been a long-desired amenity for the citizens of this community. We thought it was only appropriate to utilize these funds in that manner. Now, the other portion of the funding from the local is from the stormwater funds. Of course, that is used to protect the levee cap. So all in all, the city of Hays contributed roughly $400,000, or 40% of this $1 million project.
And what makes that advantageous, because it does help with the parks and all of that for recreation. You can have parks. This just happens to be a 21-mile long park that you're allowed to ride your bike and commute throughout the community of Hays.
Well, just as important as that 21-mile park is that it connects us from every park pretty much inside this community and every amenity as well. So citizens who maybe don't have the wherewithal to pay for gas, of course, as cheap as it is these days.
Yeah, that is a surprise.
It's hard to believe, but the reality is people who just want to enjoy the environment of our community. Of course, Hays has some spectacular sites throughout the entire community. They can get on a bike and ride anywhere throughout the community because this system will take them to just about every point of interest.
Let me ask this, because you have kids, and I know we have kids that have been through the system, but they would ride their bikes. And my question is will it be safe on these paths for our kids to ride bikes from to and from, or will they still need supervision?
You know, I'll answer that question with it depends. And this is why I answer that question with it depends. If you have a beginning bike rider, I wouldn't recommend riding in the street. Now, I as a father, my wife, we do ride in the street, and we do understand the rules and regulations. It's very important to understand the rules and regulations as you ride in the street, because you are in the street with these cars. It's important to wear a helmet. It's important to understand that you travel with the flow of traffic as well. Now, I do have 4 children. My oldest is 16. She's usually driving. But my next oldest is 12 years old, and then I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. They do follow us. Usually I'm leading the front, my children are in the middle, and my wife is in the end, therefore kind of creating a buffer for the kids. So they do travel with us on the street, and I feel entirely safe with them riding right behind me.
Well, that'll be a thing going forward, because as you mentioned, there's some signs going up. Is this going to be somewhere there's just a sign every block, or how does that work for the signage on this? Granted, there'll be lines and sharrows, as you call them, on the road that'll mark that this is a bike trail, this is a bike path, even when you're sharing the road with the car. But what will those motorists out there see that are participating and riding on the street in their car with those on bikes?
Sure. The motorists will see, of course, the stencils on the street, and that will then alert them that this is a system that's predominantly used by bicyclists. Now, for bicyclists, the system was created in a way that it's very intuitive. First of all, it's built with a system that has the least amount of stop signs to ensure that a bicyclist can get from point A to point B without stopping and stopping the least amount of times. So once again, it's very intuitive. As a bicyclist rides on the system, at the beginning of the block, they'll see the stencil. Throughout the entire block, they'll see the stencil. And then at the end of the block, they'll see it, and then picking up at the next one. So once again, it's very intuitive to constantly know they are on the system. If it is necessary, we will incorporate some wayfinding signs to ensure that the bicyclists, and of course any visitors that come to our community as well, know how to get from point A to B and what amenities are located on the bike path system as well.
Well, that'll be important, because to find a map and say where to go, you can find the most efficient way and probably the safest way as well. A couple other questions. What about things like skateboards and scooters and things like that? Do they participate? Are they allowed on these same bike trails with the same sort of protection?
On the concrete paths, my assumption is that skateboards will be allowed. As far as the bike lanes, the sharrows, the only thing that I understand is allowed is, of course, the bicyclists and the motorists on the streets.
And if you want to find out more, will the City of Hays website have a map to be able to get around so people know how to get there?
We currently have a map on our website, but as time, over the next couple of months, what we're going to be doing is working on marketing materials. Right now, we do have the permission to use a number of best management practices videos that will be airing on Eagle, of course.
Yeah.
So I encourage citizens to watch those. They're also available on our website. We will also be producing a number of brochures and marketing materials. And of course, anyone who is interested in helping us to get the word out, to understand more about this system, or just have questions, they can always contact me at City Hall at 628-7320.
And of course, all those things come into play for bicycle safety. You mentioned helmets earlier, flashing lights, all those things you put on your bike to be safe out there. But adding this to our community is going to be great, and being able to follow through and actually be able to get your bike and feel like you're safe when you're driving on the road is going to be fun looking forward.
That's right, and it's going to once again add another element to our quality of life here in Hays. And of course, Hays is a progressive community. I'm a little biased because I do work for the City of Hays. But this is an exceptional community, and this will only add another element to our quality of life.
Timeline?
The contractor was awarded the bid here this last commission meeting. They are expected to begin sometime after March 15. It all depends on the weather, of course. They will have approximately 50 days to complete the on-street system, 55 days to complete the concrete path. So this time next year, Gary, we'll have to do another segment on the paths.
We might have to do it on our bikes while
There you
we're out
go.
riding down the road there. See if Brandon can keep up with us. What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Let's do it. Paul Briseno has been our guest here on the Forum program. We're talking about bike trails. Hope to see you on a bike trail come next spring. Our program is brought to you by Hayes Med and by Eagle Communication, our community connected.
Youthful body, tight tummy, smooth facial lines. Greystone Cosmetic and Reconstructive Surgery is here to help you achieve your goals and give yourself the new look you've always wanted. Greystone offers sophisticated surgical and non-surgical cosmetic procedures. With services now available locally, there's no need to wait any longer. Contact Greystone Cosmetic and Reconstructive Surgery at Hayes Medical Center today or online at greystonecosmetic.hayesmed.com.